Is it panic time in Boston after Garrett Crochet's second straight concerning start?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate, and currently the host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part, it's free. So make sure you tune in because Locked On is here for you every single day. Welcome to the show. Happy Tuesday. Sorry, today's show went out so late. I've been playing a lot of catch up today. I was away all weekend because I was in my best friend's wedding. So I've just been trying to play some catch up. But I saw some things that were a positive in this weekend's 4-game set against the Tigers, and also some things that are concerning. And on today's show, I'm going to be talking all about Garrett Crochet. Is it panic time when it comes to him? Sonny Gray sent to the injured list, and the Red Sox being able to salvage a split in the series. So what was really massive going into this series, at least from a storyline perspective, was can Garrett Crochet bounce back from his last start? Can he go out there this time and mend some of those problems that he was having when he got absolutely wrecked against the Twins last week? So he went in and everybody was hoping, okay, we have Garrett Crochet on the mound here in game 3 of this series, so we should be okay. His last start was just a fluke. So he went in and he pitched on Sunday for Boston and threw 5 innings, giving up 7 hits and 5 earned runs. Now, things for a lot of the start were going well for him. In the first 4 innings, really, it seemed like smooth sailing for Crochet. He had given up 1 run at that point, but he had also 8 strikeouts in this outing and 2 walks. And it felt like, okay, he's getting a lot more swings and misses now because he didn't strike out anybody in that game against the Twins. So that's a positive that we are going back to that and that he's able to get back into that groove of having a high strikeout rate. So that all looked positive, but then he had 1 inning where things just went south for him, and that was that 5th inning. And things just started going downhill. He gave up 4 of the 5 runs in that inning. And then it went back to a storyline of, all right, Garrett Crochet still starting to struggle. Now, his next outing is going to be massive because all eyes are going to be on Garrett Crochet and is he able to bounce back? Because you can take 2 rough outings and say, okay, it is what it is. He's just not playing his best right now. But if you go in to a 3rd consecutive outing and still struggle, obviously that means there's probably something wrong. Physically would be my guess. We have to start talking about the possibility of there being an injury because he's not a bad pitcher. He's still Garrett Crochet, but he's not the Garrett Crochet that the Red Sox need him to be with the way he's looked in his last couple of outings. And is it time for the Red Sox to panic over Garrett Crochet? No. If he does it a 3rd time, I would say, yes, there is a reason to worry. He was the AL Cy Young runner-up last year and ranked 72nd of 73 qualified pitchers in earned run average this season. So obviously that stat in itself is alarming. Through 5 starts, he's registered a 7.88 ERA over 24 innings of work. And obviously in that regard, it's not ideal because it's Garrett Crochet and he's supposed to be the guy who's the best starter in your rotation. Over his last 2 starts, he's allowed more earned runs than strikeouts and more home runs than scoreless innings. After the worst start of his career against the Twins, he came out and surrendered a 1st inning run against the Tigers, but then he cruised through those next 3 innings, like I said, and then the Tigers jumped on him for 4 more runs in the 5th inning. So the reason why it's not time to panic just yet is because the velocity did dip in his start against Minnesota and he paid the price for it, but the velocity didn't dip too much to where it was a drastic issue at that point. But that was also following a 100 plus pitch performance and is consistent with an early season outing last season after a long outing when he also temporarily lost some velo. So in the Twins game, I said, all right, he threw over 100 pitches last time. His arm's probably a little fatigued, so he just doesn't have it. And he's throwing the ball a lot slower than he was before. And that could be why the Twins are pouncing on him. Also, obviously, tipping some pitches I thought might have played a factor in that too. But the good news is the velocity was back up in his outing on Sunday. He was hitting about 97 or so on the fastball, and the stuff overall looked as sharp as it normally does typically. His sinkers on the arm side earned strikes, while his fastballs above the zone ended up just flying by hitters in 2-strike counts. He didn't get as many strikes with his cutter, but it wasn't so bad that he couldn't use the pitch at all. So that to me says his stuff is still there. It's not like he's losing his ability to be able to throw those pitches effectively. But there are a couple issues that have definitely been a common theme for him as of late. The first one is that he's been falling behind hitters. Last year, Crochet threw 31.5% of his pitches ahead in the count. So far this year, that number is down to just 25.2%. The league average is down to about 28% from 29%, potentially in part due to the ABS system. But Crochet went from above average to below. And he's also getting to 2-strike counts against fewer hitters. Last year, he got 2 strikes against 57% of the hitters he faced. And this year, he's getting to put away counts against just 46% of opponents. So he's not even getting to that count that he needs to in order to put away the hitters. So that's something that he actually acknowledged too and said he knew that it was happening after the outing. And he spoke about it. He mentioned that he's aware, and he said that right now every mistake that I make is getting absolutely hammered, but it's because they're mistakes when I'm behind in the count. I went into it today with a willingness to throw the 4-seamer at the top zone at a high volume. Then I dig myself in the hole versus Dylan Dingler and kind of just fall into a trap of having to throw a 4-seam for a strike. Right now, I feel like I know what needs to happen, just a matter of doing it. So he knows he's getting behind in counts. That's a big problem that hopefully he can adjust. The second problem is the actual execution with 2 strikes, particularly with his sweeper, because his sweeper was a deadly pitch last year, and he's just not executing on that pitch. Lefties are 4 for 13 against Crochet this season, but his sinker is still incredibly effective, and opponents will start as many righties as possible against him in general. So that's where more of it matters, is the data when there's a righty up at the plate. So in 2-strike counts against righties, his sweeper accounts for almost 35% of pitches that he throws. So that makes it his most used pitch in those counts. A year after his 4-seam dominated in 2-strike counts, while he's throwing it more, it's also been less effective because the put away rate is down from 30% to 19%, despite a nearly identical shape. The shape is the same in the way that the pitch is delivered is the same, but the results are different. And that most likely is due to location, which is the case here. He's essentially not getting the ball to the glove side as frequently. A left-handed sweeper to a right-handed hitter will play best essentially at the back foot. And Crochet hasn't thrown to that spot as often this season. When it's over the middle or up, righties can get around it and pull it to left field for hits. So that's essentially what's happening here. The stuff is still there. So it could be a mechanical issue. But if this continues to happen and he has another rough start in his next outing, 3 in a row is enough to say, okay, maybe there's an injury going on behind the surface. If it's 2 and he's able to fix it next time, then we can say, okay, it's probably just based on the location, mechanical stuff. His release on the sweeper might be a little bit different in terms of his arm slot and where he's actually releasing the ball to have that pitch be less effective. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he's just got to implement and be more effective with that pitch because he's just not hitting it at the same rate that he usually does and that we're used to seeing. It's a really good pitch, but let's hope he can continue to kind of build off of things. Obviously, this most recent start was better than the Twins start. Not saying much, of course, but he just needs to be able to locate those pitches and not get behind on counts. And he needs to get to 2-strike counts and go back to what he's best at with generating those swings and misses. So if there's any concern here about this going on for longer, it would be if maybe he's fatigued and he needs to miss a couple outings because he's just physically tired. That could be something to explore. But overall, based on the fact that his stuff is still there and his velocity was back up in the outing, to me, it doesn't feel like a long-term issue, but maybe more something specific that he needs to alter. So hopefully he does alter that, because we really need a good and healthy and fun Garrett Crochet to pitch in this rotation. And what's interesting also to think about here is his control, because he's already hit 4 batters after only hitting 3 all of last season. His walk rate is also up to 7.8% from last year's 5.7%. Plus, he's regularly falling behind, like I said. So it's tough that he's not really in the strike zone as much either, but that all feels like fixable stuff. And if he can't fix it, that's going to be a huge problem for the Red Sox, because they went into this season with the assumption that he would be the ace coming out of the starting rotation. So they can't really afford for him to not be that ace that they need. So we'll see how he does in his next outing. He really needs to bounce back and show people that he still has it, and that he just was struggling with a specific area of his game. Because if this becomes an issue down the road, then it's time to have more conversation about the fact that maybe he's injured and needs to take some time off. So hopefully he turns things around. But coming up, the biggest thing that a lot of people are talking about right now, besides Crochet, is Sonny Gray headed to the IL. So that's going to be discussed next. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs, because what it does is it actually helps you reach the people who fit specifically what you're looking for in terms of skills, experience, and location, so that you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnRedSox. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnRedSox right now and support this show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/LockedOnRedSox. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. It's well worth it to save lots of time and stress when it comes to the hiring process. Also, don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with me and other listeners of this show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonredsox.supercast.com and hit subscribe on that. The Red Sox salvaged a split in a series against the Tigers this weekend that went Friday to Monday. They had the annual Patriots Day game on Monday at 11:10 a.m. while the Boston Marathon was being run, and they pulled out a win in that game. And the bats were finally starting to do something, because for the first few games of that series, the offense wasn't really hitting. And after they salvaged a win in game 1, it seemed like the rest of the series was going to be all doom and gloom because they weren't hitting. They lost the second and third games of that series, but they were able to salvage a win in Game 4 on Patriots Day by winning 8-6 in that game. But unfortunately, that didn't come with all good things because Sonny Gray actually had to exit that game after throwing just 2 2/3 innings, giving up 3 hits and 1 earned run with 1 walk and 2 strikeouts. He only threw 40 pitches with 27 of them going for strikes and now has a 4.3 earned run average on the season, but he had to exit the game early. And it was really unfortunate because he left due to right hamstring tightness, and the bullpen was already fatigued because on the prior 2 days, they didn't get the length that they needed. I mean, Brian Bayo only went 4 innings in Saturday's 4-1 loss, and then obviously Garrett Crochet with the 5 innings the next day. So the Red Sox weren't really getting that length. They did win Game 1 of the series 1-0 in extra innings, thanks to Masataka Yoshida, who hit the walk-off base hit in the 10th inning. But Ranger Suarez in this series definitely deserves a ton of credit. He threw 8 innings in Game 1, giving up just 2 hits and no runs with 1 walk and 4 strikeouts. And it feels like Ranger is starting to get back to form. His last couple outings have been absolutely stellar, and the Red Sox really needed that type of outing from him because they didn't have to burn through the bullpen. But with the bullpen already feeling fatigued after games 2 and 3, Game 4 then came along, and obviously it's not Sonny's fault, but the bullpen needed to relieve a lot of that game. So they were at least able to still pull off the win, but he is now on the injured list, and he essentially had started throwing in the 3rd inning, and he had just walked Gleyber Torres when he started bending down, stretching, and bending his right leg. And then pitching coach Andrew Bailey and catcher Carlos Narvaez both came out to visit him on the mound and check in on him. And then shortly after that, Alex Cora and a trainer came out onto the mound. Gray ended up taking a few warm-up throws, and then after a brief conversation, he walked off the field with the Red Sox leading 2-1. So after the win, Alex Cora said, Sonny's going to get an MRI on Tuesday. We don't think it's serious. But Gray knew he wouldn't be able to continue after testing the leg. He said, I threw that last 3-2 pitch, and I felt just like a grab to my right hamstring, something I felt before. I kind of knew what it was. I knew that I needed to at least throw a warm-up pitch before I would feel comfortable continuing. I threw a warm-up pitch, same feeling, not a grab, more of like a tightness after that. So he didn't feel comfortable because he has previously dealt with right hamstring issues in 2022 and 2024. So he knows what this is like. He said, I've dealt with it for a while, just managed it. It just happens every now and then. It's just something that I'm always having to monitor since the first time it happened. So it's something that he's dealt with before, but the Red Sox have him now on the injured list. So he is on the 15-day IL, and he'll be eligible to be reinstated from the IL in early May, but it's unclear exactly how long he's expected to be sidelined. They'll just have to kind of see how he's doing and his progress. And once they are able to feel confident that he's feeling good, then he could come back and return. But he ended up being diagnosed with a strain after undergoing medical imaging. So this is obviously not ideal because injuries, of course, are part of the game, but this is just not a situation that the Red Sox are really hoping for because Sonny Gray is a guy who has been a little rocky this season so far, hasn't exactly had every outing be super reliable, but he's a guy the Red Sox really do see as a key part of their rotation moving forward this season. So because he went on the IL, it's now hard for the Red Sox to feel as confident because they're like, wow, I mean, there goes one of our starters who we thought was going to be one of our more reliable starters in the rotation this season moving forward. And what's also tough about it is now that he's on the IL, it doesn't allow him the ability to continue to work through some of his struggles he might have had earlier on in the season because he had a tough first outing. Then he had 2 really good starts. Then he struggled again prior to his outing in yesterday's game. But now because he's hurt and he's going to miss time, now it doesn't really give him the opportunity his next time out to get things right and show that he's getting back on track, because now that he has a setback with the injury, now he's going to have to focus on his injury recovery. So then when he does come back to pitch, what version of Sonny Gray are we going to get? Because it's a guy who won't necessarily be able to continue working through everything that's unrelated to his injury and just in terms of his pitching approach and mechanics and everything like that until he's back. So it's obviously a tough blow. And now the question is going to be, where do the Red Sox go from here? Because in place of Sonny Gray, they ended up calling up Tyler Samaniego to take his place on the roster, but he's not a starter. He's a guy that they've been using in relief, made his major league debut this season, but he's not a guy that will likely be in the rotation moving forward, but he's a guy who got called up to essentially take the place of Sonny Gray. So the question is, how is that rotation going to now fill out as the Red Sox look to navigate this tough situation here? So essentially, Payton Tolle is the guy who I expect will get the call because he's already on the 40-man roster, so they won't have to add him to it. And he has looked dominant to start the season, striking out 19 batters in his first 15 innings in Worcester after punching out 13 in his 10 2/3 innings during Major League spring training. So he did strike out 7 Yankees in 3 innings of work in his best spring outing. That may not be as worth noting because most of the major leaguers were out of the game by the time he came in, but still he was generating the swings and misses. And for him, he's been a guy who continues to work hard. I spoke with him on Woo Sox Media Day, asked him how he's feeling, and he said he's just really focusing on continuing to improve and expand on his arsenal and just be ready whenever he gets his opportunity again. His most recent outing was his strongest one of the year as he worked 5 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts against the Columbus Clippers, and he definitely has that high strikeout upside. So it'll be interesting to see if the Red Sox do decide, okay, he's going to start in place of Sonny Gray in his next outing. Because Samaniego is a guy who definitely showed that he can be a big league arm in terms of the abilities that he had to be able to get guys out effectively. And Samaniego's made 3 appearances for the Red Sox, pitching 3 2/3 scoreless innings. So he definitely has shown that potential, and he'll be a good arm to be able to utilize in the pen, but they can't just stretch him out into a starter since that's not really a spot that he's pitched in. So for me, Payton Tolle feels like the choice to call up and take Sonny Gray's spot while he's on the IL. And then when he comes back, they could always send Tolle back down to AAA at that point. But it's good to have guys on standby here. And this is exactly something I talked about prior to the season starting, was it's going to be very unlikely that all of these starting pitchers are going to stay healthy for the entirety of the season. I mean, that would be an absolute miracle if that were to be the case, but we have to assume that somebody's going to get hurt at some point. And by keeping Payton Tolle in AAA to start the season, you already know that's a guy who could be called upon for the Red Sox to say, hey, we need you up at the majors now. You've gotten exposure to pitching at the major league level, so this is your chance again to really showcase what you can do there. So that's why it feels like Payton Tolle would be the guy who's the choice. And when it comes to him, there's definitely a lot of exciting things that he's shown. His fastball continues to be a really dominant pitch from him. His arsenal is definitely something that I'm still looking for him to continue to expand on and continue to grow and develop. But this is a guy who just continues to work so hard. We'll be really happy about the idea of getting called back up if it ends up being him. And I'm really curious to see how he's able to perform if that's the case. Also keep an eye on Jake Bennett from AAA. Is he a guy the Red Sox consider calling up? He's looked good so far to start the season in Worcester. And he's a guy the Red Sox acquired via trade this offseason. So that's another possibility as well. But either way, with Gray headed to the IL, somebody's going to have to take his spot. Is it ideal? know, but hopefully when he's back from the IL, he's hopefully able to pitch really effectively. So ultimately, we'll have to see how things go there, but the Red Sox did salvage a split in this series against the Tigers. So coming up, I'm going to be talking about some good things that we saw. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the Confetti Craze 5-Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is that classic taste you remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. So for me, I've always loved birthday cake, but I can't be eating sweets all day. So this is a perfect alternative because it tastes just like birthday cake, but it's healthier. The Funfetti flavor is back on 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Crack open Confetti Craze 5-Hour Energy Shot today. It's so addicting, but it's also so worth it because it just tastes so good. So invest in some for sure. The Red Sox faced the Tigers in a 4-game series from Friday to Monday of this week. And while the offense definitely underwhelmed in most of those games, it didn't underwhelm in the last game of the series in which the Red Sox pulled off an 8-6 win. Jack Flaherty was starting for the Tigers. He lasted just 3 1/3 innings, giving up 3 hits and 2 runs, but they weren't earned runs. They were both unearned. So it was more his defense behind him that wasn't exactly helping him out there. But he walked 6 and struck out 3. So his command just was not there for him. And that was the biggest thing that he ran into that bumped up his pitch count essentially early on in the game, and he couldn't last very long. But the Red Sox as a team in the game were able to string together 12 hits in this game. And they also had 7 strikeouts. And I say that because we're so used to the Red Sox having games where they're having double-digit strikeouts as a team, which is obviously not ideal, but that just wasn't the case in this game. 7 total strikeouts as a team to go along with those 12 hits. So there were definitely some positives that we can take away from this series. Carlos Narvaez had 2 hits in the game. I'm hoping that he's starting to find his groove again. He ended up going 2 for 3 also with a walk in the game. And Narvaez has really been struggling at the plate. So he's a guy I've really been pushing to continue to hopefully see him get back into the swing of things. And that's definitely something that we are starting to see a little bit more of. Caleb Durbin appears to be getting more comfortable at the plate in general. He went 2 for 4 in this game with a walk as well. His batting average is now up to a 162 on the season with a 260 on base percentage and a 235 slugging. And we need Durbin to be able to continue to improve and contribute at the plate. He also did get a hit the day before, a game in which the Red Sox lost 6-2, but he was able to make good contact in that game. So I have high hopes for Durbin. He's starting to find a little bit more confidence and develop a little bit more into that player that the Red Sox want him to be. In the 1-0 extra innings win, he also went 1 for 3 in that game. So he was able to make some contact here in this series. And the biggest issue with Caleb Durbin prior was that he wasn't always able to be effective when it came to even putting the ball in play. He was striking out a lot and just not really seeing the ball well. Over the last 6 games, though, he's batted .286 with a .375 on base percentage and .476 slugging percentage. He's only struck out twice in his last 34 plate appearances, and he's really starting to look more like the player they need him to be. And the offensive metrics now are starting to catch up a little bit more with what we saw from him last year. Now, what I will say is that he does need to make better contact still. Like, at least he is starting to make contact a little bit, and we are seeing that improvement, but it's just something we need to start to see a little bit more of, because yes, it's exciting and it's an optimistic way of thinking, like, okay, great, we're starting to get that version of him, but it's now going to be a matter of him being able to do that consistently. But he's definitely somebody who deserves a lot of props for what he's starting to do a little bit better as of now with this series. Connor Wong just continues to hit still too. In the extra innings 1-0 win. He went 1 for 2 in that game with a walk. And then the next day, he didn't have the best day, 0 for 3 with a strikeout. And then in the game after that, the Sunday game, Narvaez did the catching, so we didn't see Wong in that game, and we didn't see him in the game on Monday either. But the crazy thing about Connor Wong is that he just continues to be among the Red Sox best hitters, a 333 average, 385 on base percentage, and 500 slugging percentage. So he's really playing into that role of being an effective catcher. And you have to wonder if he's going to start getting more of the reps over the course of the season, if he's hitting better than Carlos Narvaez is, and if that's something the Red Sox would consider. But that being said, though, I mean, the second game of that series, they did face Tarek Skubal, who is who he is, and they weren't really doing much at all against him. They only got 4 hits against him over 6 innings. They scored 1 run with 2 walks and 10 strikeouts. So obviously not a good day for the offense. But Ranger Suarez, I mean, that 8-inning outing by him was huge. This is a guy who I hope we are able to say is back and is finally starting to figure things out, because he was struggling early on in the season in his first couple outings. And then now we're able to say, wow, okay, so Ranger seems to be getting things together. And you do have to wonder if that fatigue and of feeling like he wasn't exactly built up enough yet from the WBC has played a factor in it, because in his first couple outings, it was pretty clear that he kind of looked a little bit all over the place. And I definitely think that played a role in it, maybe getting acclimated to the catchers here, but he seems to be starting to figure something out. So hopefully that continues. But the big thing is going to be consistency, because even the 1-0 game that the Red Sox won, they still had 9 strikeouts as a team and just 4 hits. So it's not like they were producing a lot of offense. The pitching was definitely the story of that game. Then they couldn't really do much against Skubal, and they had 12 strikeouts as a team in that game. Then they lost 6-2 the next day with Crochet on the bump, 10 strikeouts there compared to just 6 hits. So those 2 games, they really weren't hitting at all. And then the bats emerged in the next game. And that happens in baseball. It's a long season, so there's not always going to be consistent hitting. There are going to be days when the offense just doesn't have it, and days where the offense is putting up 12 runs and exploding. The question is going to be finding consistency, because the frustrating thing with the Red Sox right now is that they just aren't consistent. And in order to find success throughout the rest of the season, the offense just needs to find that consistency. So hopefully that's something we're able to do, but they were able to salvage a win on Monday to go along with Friday's win and to walk away from that series with a split, considering the fact that Garrett Crochet didn't have it again and Sonny Gray got hurt and had to exit the game early. Considering all those circumstances, I'll take a split. So now go into this series with the Yankees and win that series and continue to find ways to win baseball games. So we'll have to see how things play out here, but thanks so much, as always, for tuning into Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen of every single day. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, because I'll have legendary reporter from the Boston Globe, Dan Shaughnessy, on the show, who's going to be talking all about his Red Sox coverage over the years and his thoughts on the current team. So you definitely won't want to miss that. So make sure you subscribe and follow on any podcast platform so you get that, as well as all of the latest episodes. Plus, you can find me on Twitter at Gabby Maljanian and on Instagram at Gabby_Maljanian10. The show is also available on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Red Sox ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnRedSox.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, I now send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, for your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. Keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.